Now, dedicating a whole life to serving the nation is something every citizen should do with pride and also get rewarded for when they decide to retire. Well, recently, some retired police officers have lamented that their pensions and gratuities paid under the Nigeria Police Force Contributory Pension Scheme are meager and unjust. Issues about the poor pension package for retired policemen came to the fore last week when a viral video of a retired superintendent of police rejected a 3 million naira gratuity and pension offered to him by the NPF, describing the payment as an insult to his 35 years of dedicated service to the country. Another retired assistant superintendent of police, Festus Oguche, described the payment as shameful and unacceptable, revealing that after serving the country for 35 years, he was paid just a little over 3 million naira in total benefits.
A retired superintendent of police I retired from the Nigerian police in 2023, October 1st. Since then, nothing has been paid to me. Just 2 weeks back, they called me that they are going to pay me 3 million naira. What for? They say that is my pension. Lo and behold, the 3 million naira is not just all the whole pension. That 1 million naira is my arrears for the time, from the time I retired to date. Then 2 million naira is my entitlement. I cannot serve this country for good 35 years and being paid 2 million naira. The devil is a liar.
Now, however, over the last 6 months, there have been a lot of positive developments within Nigeria's pension ecosystem. These have been targeted at the contributors and the retirees, specifically with regard to benefits and payments. Well, joining us on the show to discuss the pension issue in the police force and the federal government's issuance of a 758 billion naira bond to clear outstanding pension liabilities is Oguche Agudah, CEO of the Pension Fund Operators Association of Nigeria. Good morning and welcome to the program today.
Good morning.
Yeah, great to have you.
Mr. Agudah. Well, there have been issues with this police pension system. The police, they are asking that retired soldiers, having been moved out of the contributory pension scheme, that they also want to be the same, to be treated the same way. So is this a question of interagency rivalry? 2, they are asking for a reform of the pension system. 3, they are asking for an investigation, and they are supported in this regard by quite a number of civil society groups. And they are saying that President Tinubu, who is now in the saddle, should investigate why there is so much injustice in the payment of a retired policeman. So these are the 3 major issues. Which of these 3 issues do you think is the most urgent? Or is it that the policemen want to be treated like soldiers, or they deserve to be treated fairly as people who have served this country and who deserve indeed to be treated fairly?
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Dr. Abati. I think every worker deserves to be treated fairly. If you've worked for a while, you deserve your pensions. And that is what the police are getting. They are getting their fair pension for the work they have done. When they compare themselves to the military, what I always say is, world over, your pensions is a result of your salary. So if your salary is a particular amount, you can't expect your pension to be higher than that. So it's open knowledge that the military are paid more than the police. So we always say what needs to happen.
No, but they are not part of the CPS. They were moved out of that scheme.
Yeah, I'm getting there.
The police are saying, move us out of that scheme.
Yeah, I'm getting there. So whatever scheme you do, whether it's the CPS or the defined benefit scheme, your pensions will be a function of your salary. That's the first thing. The second thing is that When they say the grass is greener on the other side, they actually pay more water bills. The military are not necessarily enjoying as the police claim, because if you investigate deeper, and I want us to actually do this investigation, the military are actually complaining. Some of them are not getting their pensions on time because that pension system is not funded. This pension system is funded, meaning that once you retire, your money is there. The defined benefit scheme has to do with the government budgets, has to do with the head of the military if he wants to pay or not, or military boards, pension boards. And we know what happened with pension boards. The greatest lesson humanity learns from history is that we don't learn from history. It's not just a while back when we heard about Maynard's scandal and the pension boards. Pension boards that the police want to go to are not transparent and they are not sustainable, right? So what the police is talking about, he says he received a particular amount when he retired. And what I always say is you receive that money. That's the first thing. In the previous process, the monies were not coming. And in where you want to go to, the money will not come. So what we need to get to is you receive the money, but it's not enough. And I ask, have you heard the CBN staff retirees complaining? Have you heard NNPC staff complaining, retirees? Have you heard SEC staff complaining? It's not. And they're on the same CPS. So it is really a function of the remuneration of the staff. And we need to have conversations about the remuneration of the police and the police valuing the staff and their remuneration, especially retirements, because companies like CBN, SEC, and MDAs, they also use part of their internally generated funds to augment pensions and do additional benefit scheme. And that is what we've been advocating for the police to do. First thing with the CPS, the money is coming and it's constant. That nobody can take away. If you see all the people that are complaining, no one has said, I didn't receive my pensions. It comes. So we have moved away from 20 years ago when people were dying. So now what we need to discuss is how can we increase that? And I think that's a discussion we need to have.
I see. Well,
you're saying it's
some
coming.
Of you collect your pension as you go. But we have to defend the interests of pensioners.
Absolutely.
Because
part of the argument is that, because I know you're saying...
I'm ready.
Dr. Abati, Rufai, order. So I know you've made the point that they're receiving the pensions. But one of the arguments in place is that what they go through to even receive the meager pension, that still hasn't been resolved, that the bureaucratic hurdles are still frustrating. Sometimes the payments are incomplete. In the case of this man, you can't tell me that he didn't know what the expected amount was, the projected amount of his pension would be. I would have loved to go, to go further into that conversation. But obviously, for him to come out and make the statement, it means what he expected or what he was supposed to get is not what he got. So can you clarify that opacity that is now becoming, continues to be marred in controversy? I don't think it's enough to say that, oh, they're getting it, when it's not being done properly and sometimes they're not getting the full amount.
Yeah, no, I'm not being insensitive to their plight. Like I said, all pensioners deserve to get fair pensions, right? So with him, I think this is an isolated case you will see, and you will find a number of police officers who are receiving as much as 500,000 monthly or receiving 10 million when they retire. So it's depends. Your cadre, it all depends on your salary, your last salary that you receive. That's number one. Number two, with regards to opacity, the CPS is very open and very plain. And we need to get to the issue of financial education and financial literacy and retirement planning, right? If you've worked for 35 years under the CPS, you get an alert every month once your pensions are paid. And what we always say is, if you haven't gotten that, you need to rise up and talk to your PFA, talk to your administrator, talk to the regulator to say, I haven't received my pensions or I haven't gotten an alert. So with the system, you get an alert every month once your pensions are paid. If you don't get that, then there's an issue. And I think with this particular case, there was an issue. He wasn't getting his alerts because there was an issue in terms of he had put a wrong PFA. So the money was going to an account that wasn't captured, right? So one of the things that we need to do more is to educate people. Every month, you should get an alert that says your pensions is paid. If you don't get that, then raise an alarm. If this was done earlier, that would have cleared his own issue. But I think they've resolved it now.
Okay. Let's take this police officer, for instance. Let's even break down what an average police officer earns and what would translate to their pension. You know me, I'm a man of empirical facts, so that we see it. Let's break down what this man probably was earning, what was taken apart for his pension, the counterpart contributory fund. Let's just do the analysis here. So let's even know the numbers.
Okay. What typically happens is when you are working, 8% of your salary every month is deducted as a pension, and your employer is meant to put 10%. So the police pensions his employer will put 10% and he 8%. So every month that money goes into an account, is invested, it grows. And then when you retire, I think world over, there's a standard that your pension should not be less than a particular percentage of your last salary. And that's what we try to do. So whatever you're receiving is a percentage of your last salary.
So he said he was getting 2 million.
He
said he got $2 million on for working for how many years?
No, so I guess when you look at for working for how many years, right? 3 million 10 years ago was probably big money. So you can be emotional and say, I got 3 million because
also
of what 3 million can buy. Inflation, yes. So those are
destroyed
things, yes,
the value of money.
Yes. As an industry, we are working to ensure that money goes more, is invested more. And like I said, recently, the PENCOM introduced pension boosts, meaning that, what pensioners are receiving has gone up across board by about 40%. So what they'll be receiving monthly. And it's based on the investment returns that the PFAs have.
But in a country where, because of government dynamics, inflation can cream off. I mean, we've all become poorer in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
In the last 3-4 years, really since this government got into power, close to 35% inflation rate at some point has creamed off and the naira got devalued.
Yeah.
Is there a way we can hedge against this level of inflation? Because you're correct, you're spot on. If it was 2012 that he was paid this 3 million naira, it's some decent amount.
Yeah.
But today, the 3 million naira cannot go far.
Yeah, and it's not just his fault. So
we're
all suffering about that. So what I'm saying is that, so what the police want to do is they want to pull out. And if you're going to pull out, we need about 3.5 million to 4 trillion naira for them to pull out of the scheme. And what's the government going to do? They're going to borrow more. What's going to happen? Inflation is going to increase. So if you receive 20 million, the money is not going to ask for more based on what they are saying. So we need to look at the facts. But what the industry is doing is trying to see how we can move more into alternative investments, which give more return and trying to bring safety and return. So that's the balance we need to do. And there's a lot of stuff we are doing, investing in infrastructure, private equity, real estate, so that the pensioners can get more for their pensions. It's a whole discussion. And what I always say is, like, the police are saying, they've done much, and we agree with that. It's like you have 6 children, and one of the children says, I want to school abroad. You take the money and school abroad, and the other people can't feed, or the country, or the family collapses. So we have to look at holistically the pension industry, and not just the police, and a number of things we're doing.
Okay, Mr. Agudah, I assume that you agree with those who are arguing for a reform of the pension system. But in the UK, they have a system they call the triple lock system. That's what it's called. Or the LPI, Limited Pension Initiative, whereby under that scheme, the triple lock says if inflation goes up, your pension is adjusted. Would you recommend that kind of system as part of the reform in Nigeria, not just for policemen, but across board?
Across board. Buffer inflation.
Yeah, that's something. We've also, yes, I recommend that. I think that's the first recommend. We've also spoken about inflation-linked bonds. That's something we've spoken about. That's if the inflation goes up, the amount of money we get from the bonds goes up with the federal government, that we invest in federal government bonds. If the inflation goes down, the amount of interest we receive goes down, and it makes the government to be a bit more disciplined, right? That is.
I'm not talking about government. I'm talking about what gets to the
but it's from the bonds that it will get to the client. So if you fix the investment in a bond, if inflation goes up, it is what you get out of it you can use to benchmark the inflation. That's what he's talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
What I'm just saying is about the interest of the pensioner.
It's talking about inflation-backed bonds.
Yeah. So with that system, I agree with that system, but there are variants of that system. So what we practice in Nigeria is the contributory pension system, meaning that it's the money that people contribute that it grows. So over time, and this is, so the contributory pension system has gone on for about 20 years. Over time, if you work for 35 years, over time, if you're contributing consistently and we're compounding it, you should be fine after 35 years. The challenge is that we are still at the beginning stages or the middle stages of the contributory pension scheme. If somebody starts work at 25 and start contributing every month, don't forget he's being promoted, don't forget he's getting more money, or he gets some bonuses, he puts it there. When he retires at the end, the money should be enough. One of the things we are seeing is that we haven't followed this process through, number one. And number two, some of the people who are the lower end of the ladder, their contributions are not much. Some of the things we've told to the police is that the police can bear the 8% that the workers are bearing. So that, the workers don't have to put that amount of money.
Okay, one more question, and
Yes,
I'll
sir.
keep quiet. The issue also has been about management
Yes.
of this same contributory pension scheme. A lot of corruption in the management of pensions. You know these stories.
Yes,
That's
yes.
out there in the media. So how do we plug that so that people don't work for Nigeria their entire life? They are entitled to pension, and some people will steal their money. You are talking about investment. These investments are not properly managed. How do you plug the holes?
Not under the contributory pension scheme, right? And that is why we are advocating not under the contributory pension
Are
scheme.
you sure? Some of the names that have been mentioned,
No, 100%, 100%.
you want me to give you an example?
No, please. It's under the defined benefit scheme. If you go to PENCOM's website now, you can see how much people contribute. You can see how much is invested. You can see how many people. It's there.
There's a regulator.
But you can't do that with the military pension scheme. It's opaque. And that's what the police is trying to go into. Opacity breeds corruption. So it's open. Under the contributory pension scheme is open. What they're investing in, how much they're investing is coming. And that's why we are saying it's better for people to stay in this scheme if it's a case of
pension
adequacy.
fund administrators.
Yes.
You are making an argument for them.
I am, yes, I am.
Are you very sure of the argument that you are making?
100%
Because
sure.
the PFAs also have issues.
Well,
That's what I'm drawing your attention.
every company, every industry has issues, but not an issue of transparency. Not an issue of transparency.
But having said this, some members of the police force have planned to protest on the 21st of July. The International Human Rights Commission is also saying they've written a diplomatic letter saying that there are constitutional breaches where it concerns the CPS. You've painted a very rosy picture, but obviously on the ground there are issues. How do you reconcile the fact that people are ready to protest nationwide because of this CPS scheme?
Yes, so not really a rosy issue that I've painted. I've painted progress. There is no perfect system, but there's progress. And I'll read what the IGP Egbetokun said. He says, has any one of you seen the details of the contents of the bill? You need to go and look at the bill and see where you want to exit to. There's a lot of emotions, Vimbai, when it comes to emoluments, salaries, pensions, and the police emotionally charged because they feel they're not paid much. Right? I think we need to douse the tension and have a sit down to say, okay, where do you want to go to? If you look at the bill that they are fighting to move to, it says you must have worked for at least maybe 15 years or so before you can get your pensions. If you are dismissed, you don't get your pensions. We are going back to the dark ages. Under the contributory pension scheme, if you've worked somewhere for about 5 years, you can decide, I don't want to work with the police again. I go somewhere else. Your pensions is still secure. Not under the scheme that they are hoping to go to. So yes, it's not rosy. CPS is not perfect. But as a country, I think it's a system that we need to see how we can get better as opposed to pull it down, right? And it's funded. So there are pluses, there are negatives, but I think the pluses
The question
outweigh.
I want to ask is,
Yes.
are the institutions paying their counterpart funding in this CPS? Is the police paying the 10% they ought to?
They are.
And they're paying very well.
That's a plus, they are.
You get?
They are.
Are state governments paying their 10% that they ought to pay?
We might not have time to finish that conversation on this show this
So
morning.
obviously that means they're not paying. So
Not all the state governments.
Not all.
Very few.
Just only few.
Very few state
So
governments.
and they're under the CPS. So those are some of the challenges.
Yes, that's a big conversation.
I know that
there are some corporates that are not.
Corporates that are not.
Yeah, there's some
Yes.
corporates that are not
Issues we are
paying their
raising.
own.
Yes,
Yes, you're correct, sir.
So some corporates are not paying.
They are
Who
not.
holds those corporates accountable?
Yes.
That's number one question. Number two will be, I know that there's also a certain amount of money government is supposed to pay the pension administrators to be able to trigger the payment
Of the minimum pension
of the
guarantee.
minimum pension guarantee. Is government paying that money?
They've just approved the 758 billion bond.
All this
That's-
while
it
they
hasn't
didn't
been
pay it.
paid.
Yeah, well, but I think we should applaud progress.
But all this while government didn't pay that money too.
Let's applaud progress. That's the way I like to look at it.
Progress for which there is no guarantee.
No, that bond has been approved, and the money is about
It's approved, but
So
we
it's
have
a
not
bond.
seen results.
about 107 billion. About
No,
100
it's been approved as a bond paper.
Yes.
So you have to take the bond to now activate it.
Yes, yes.
So it's not that it's money issue. So it's not money you have in your
No,
hand.
the money
It's
is
a
going to
bond.
come in. The money is going to come in as
And
part
so-
of the minimum pension guarantee.
So
That's
you're going to
one of the
also
things.
have a paper for it. Because I also know that was a debilitating factor in payments not being issued out all this while.
Yes, and
Because
the accrued rights, yes.
So, and the accrued rights, yeah,
Yes,
that's
the
exactly
accrued
what I'm
rights.
getting from
The
my
accrued rights. Yeah, that has been an issue, and I'll confess that has been an issue, an Achilles heel of the industry. But we've gotten an approval to get that bond approved.
How do we get the state governments to pay up their counterpart fund, the corporate companies to pay out their counterpart fund? Is there a system where we can call them out or what? Because
Yeah, so I think constitutionally, the CPS, if you see the law, it is for federal workers and corporates. The state governments, I think it's under the concurrent law, or some of the lawyers need to help me. Yeah. But the Pension Act does not cover the state governments per se. There are legal arguments against that. So each state has to domesticate the act, and that's where the challenge has been. So a state has to have the political will to say...
What about the federal parastatals are not paying theirs?
The federal parastatals, I must give them a pass mark.
All of them are paying.
They are.
What about the corporate companies that are not paying theirs?
Yeah, so the PENCOM DG and PENCOM has issued a zero tolerance now for people that are not paying, and you'll be excluded from the ecosystem. So if you're not paying, you can't get business with the pension funds, you can't get business with the government, What I typically say, to be honest, personally, when I see people and I say your company is not paying, I tell the person you need to begin to make a plan to leave your company, because that means that your company doesn't want to grow. The reason why I'm saying that is because if you are not paying pensions, you can't get government with contract with government, you can't grow internationally. So as an individual, if your company is not paying pensions, I will advise that you begin to find somewhere else to go, because your company is not serious about growing or your own development.
Thank you, Oguche.
All right.
A worker's reward. Some people will say, is where?
It's after your retirement. It's after your retirement.
I don't know this one.
It's after your retirement.
It's in heaven, isn't it?
It's in heaven.
I didn't want to say it because we talked about we want it to be on earth as it is in heaven.
It's right here after your retirement.
I love your optimism. I think everybody needs somebody like you to go to bat for them, because you're able to, make a very optimistic argument for all issues at hand. And of course, we do hope that all these issues are resolved speedily. All right.